Hello there. Welcome to the Maker Manager Money podcast. My name is Kyle Ariel Knowles, and today's guest is Ken McKenzie. Ken is the visionary founder and CEO of Fresh Victor, a premium line of all-natural, cold-pressed, refrigerated mixers for effortlessly delicious cocktails, low alcohol, and spirit-free drinks. With over 20 years of experience in the creation, import, and distribution of spirits and craft beverages, Ken is a successful serial entrepreneur with a rich history in the industry. Before launching Fresh Victor, Ken co-founded Republic Tequila and Republic Spirit Blends. His impressive career also includes the import, development, and launch of unique spirits like Onyx coffee liquors and his highly demanded 100% agave tequila brand, Amate. Ken is a frequent and respected speaker at high-profile industry events, educating the beverage market and hospitality industry on 100% agave tequila. His Republic and Amate tequila brands have garnered over 15 top industry accolades, including recognition from Wine Enthusiast magazine and numerous medals at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition and Denver International Spirits Competition. Welcome to Maker Manager Money, Ken.
Thank you so much for having me on, Kyle. I really appreciate it.
When I put the intro together, I thought, wow, there must be some awards for Fresh Victor by now, too. Have you received any awards?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate in the sense, especially here at home in the Bay Area, with the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. We've been successful with 8 of our 9 flavors winning double gold and 2 of them winning best in show.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you have 9 flavors now. I originally thought you had 7. So you've come out with 2 more.
We have 9 now.
What are the 2 new ones?
Grapefruit and sea salt, which won best in show, as well as the strawberry and lemon.
Okay. I think I got those. I can't remember. Maybe I did get all 9. So I was going to tell you, thanks so much for shipping some of those Fresh Victor samples out. My family had a blast a few weekends ago trying all of the different flavors. And obviously you have some really unique ones like pineapple and ginger root and jalapeno and lime. My personal favorite is, and you're going to have to tell me what your personal favorite is, but was the cactus, pear, and pomegranate.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your favorite?
So the cactus, pear, and pomegranate I have to be careful with at home because if my daughters have access to the fridge, it will deplete very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of a purist at heart, and I think that simplicity, there's some beauty in simplicity. And so for me, the Mexican lime and agave, just as a base, just that hit of lime and kind of how it is balanced against sparkling water or just kind of using it almost like a soft drink is too easy. And so that's really kind of my go-to.
So for me, the grapefruit and sea salt was a close second of my favorites, but my whole family loved the Mexican lime and agave, exactly what you're talking about. And we were using sparkling water, and we just had so much fun getting together and just trying these. And I was going to tell you that the strawberry and lemon and the 3 citrus and mint leaf was a close second for if my whole family was voting. So, but there are some awesome ones in there, and that's so cool that you have 9 total mixers now. And I was going to ask you, I love interviewing hospitality business founders and business owners, and you kind of summed it up in this quote. I'm just going to quote you. You say, when you can connect with people over food and drink, that's the best thing you can possibly do in life. And do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can expatiate on that. I think that growing up in a large family, you associate some of the best times, whether it's the holidays or whether it's Sunday night family dinners or whatever it is, with food and drink. Whether it was my grandparents on either side of the family cooking from scratch, or my folks, or uncles and aunts, or cousins, it brought us all together in the same place. And whether we had seen each other the weekend before or we hadn't seen each other for a year, it was really nice to come together and kind of break bread, if you will. And so that was kind of ingrained in my DNA is, what makes people happy? What makes people laugh and smile? What do people like to share? And throughout time, it feels like we've really shared recipes. We've really shared, hey, you got to try this. I had this last week. It was amazing. Go to this place. And so for me, really the kind of challenge or the art in what one can do is really predicated on bringing these people together and making them happy.
And that's why you always, from a young age, wanted to do something that would bring people together.
Yeah, it represented joy to me that, if you could do something well or, better than you're used to, then it's something that people can talk about. Saying, hey, this was really good, or this was unique or different, or, hey, I want to share this with you. And when you get people talking, I think that's one of the best things in life, when people dialogue. It really breaks down the walls of, hey, I'm too busy, or hey, I don't agree with you on this or that or anything else. We can all agree that we love good food and drink.
That's correct. And I'm always a big proponent of, when you talk about culture in a company, culture in a corporate setting, culture in a federal or state department or anything like that, really that culture is developed when you do sit down and break bread, like you said. I mean, that's when you connect. That's when real stories are told and you learn about people. A lot of times people have this idea that you can build a culture just while you're all working. You can have a team meeting and that builds culture, but I don't think it does.
I really do believe in my heart of hearts that it's the most elementary or basic element. These are things that we all do unconditionally. We have to do it, but we've all iterated on it to the degree of, we know what we like, we know what we're comfortable with. And when people bring us a little bit out of the comfort zone, whether it's like jalapeno and lime, or whether it's like, whatever, it's like, hey, wow, you just showed me something new, and now I want to show somebody else. And that's the exciting part of hospitality for me, is that when you have something that is fresh and consistent and something for everyone, right? That's another facet of this, Kyle, really, for me, is that over time, and I'm a bit older now, I started out a long time ago, people over the course of time have stopped drinking, whether it's just from getting older, for health reasons, for, there's a myriad of different reasons to do so. But I always felt like people were relegated to a can of Coca-Cola or a bottle of water. Like there wasn't a whole lot of in-between space. And for me, with food and drink, it should be nothing but in-between space. And so it's really rewarding to have a product that you can just as easily mix with sparkling water for a low-cal soft drink, water for agua fresca, or even just a soft drink itself, to see how you like to drink it and feel like you're drinking the exact same thing that everybody else is with spirits.
Yeah, that's awesome. Then you're not the odd person out at the bar, holding something that obviously looks like a Coke or something like that, and you're drinking, something that brings you together, and you're trying the same kind of mixers and things like that. Let's talk about your journey before Fresh Victor. Then you were a consultant for a while to other beverage companies. Is that how you sort of got into the business?
Yeah, it was kind of a simple love story, really, and which is how things, I suppose all good things start this way. But I ended up following a girl down to Guadalajara, Mexico, and was looking for a reason to stay. And my folks had always taught me, if you're going to do something, is somebody already doing it, or are they potentially doing it better than you can? And that can often be a hard reflection in the mirror because I got to tell you, Guadalajara being the second largest city in Mexico, there was a lot of stuff being done, and it was being done very well. And so, interestingly enough, since it was the mid 1990s, what I did notice was a stark contrast between how people perceive tequila in Northern California, where I grew up in the Bay Area, versus how it was actually consumed in the heartland where it was actually produced. And I came to find out very quickly that it was one of the most Epicurean spirits on earth. It was extremely complex. It was akin to cognac in the sense that it had denomination of origin, that there was a highlands and lowlands, and a lot of artistic form around the growing of the agave, the fermentation, the distillation. And I was absolutely fascinated. And I think luckily for me, just in that time period, there was a prodigious disconnect between the US and Mexico, with Mexico being very much a cash-based society of what are we doing today as a relationship transaction, versus long-term corporate planning and performas and where are we going to do the next 5, 10, 15 years on credit basis. And so that's where the consulting really began, was understanding the differences between the two countries, how I could actually make a living in the tequila space through importation or showing people the vertical. And eventually it just morphed into my wife and I doing it for ourselves and doing our own brands.
How hard is it? You see like Ryan Reynolds or other celebrities getting into the beverage industry. How hard is it for someone to get a tequila brand going?
I would probably put it right up against, joining the NBA. it, yeah, it's not an easy space to be involved with longevity, meaning that I think I was especially fortunate to come in at a time where I think that when we grew up, it was really, the US was a place where it was mixto shots and margaritas, and there was no in between ground. Whereas we've discovered over the course of time that Mexico used it quite often as very much like we used vodka as a mixer, which is where a lot of the Blanco Plata tequila is utilized, as well as aging it in barrels for reposado, añejo, extra añejo. But the point being that when you look at this and how it's evolved, there's so many tequila brands now, where it was very limited back in the 90s and early 2000s, and the US was still learning about the space and what it actually represented. Not the tequila nightmare from college where, hey, I can't even smell it anymore. Don't get that gold bottle in front of me. But wow, this is very complex. There's a lot that goes into this. I want to learn more about where it comes from. And as that continued to mature as an industry, you had a lot more entrants. And so, last year there was over 500 new registered brands down in Mexico with the CRT. So it's a rich tapestry, really, of understanding the production side south of the border, as well as the importation and distribution and retail aspects of the industry.
And how did you educate yourself?
It really was, to a great degree, banging my head against the wall. So it was just through trial and error and experience. I was really fortunate in the sense that my wife's family had some great contacts. And so I was able to learn a lot in a relatively short period of time. I'd say a year and a half to 2 years, where I had a better understanding of the potential problems that could use solutions or solving for. That's always a great place to start. But the reality is, no matter, how you come up and learn, the only way to actually get to where you need to be is through practical experience and actually living through it. And I had some real disappointments along with some very gratifying, rewarding experiences as well. And so it's one of those things where I would say, if there's one word I would attach to this entrepreneurial journey, it's really perseverance.
Okay. I love that. And so these disappointing times, helped kind of solidify that perseverance in you. But when did you flip the switch? What was the aha moment to go and do your own tequila brand after you had educated yourself and you were consulting and helping other beverage? I assume other beverage brands get launch into the United States and go through the regulatory process, those kinds of things. When did you go, oh, I should do my own tequila brand?
It was a very natural progression over time. It was doing it and understanding it well enough where we were kind of thinking to ourselves, why are we showing everybody how to do this? It's almost like an algebraic formula of, here are the steps you need to take, and they're static. You have to do these things or you're not able to complete the venture. And after doing it over and over again, I think one thing that occurs, or at least occurred to us, was this is something we feel that we could do. We're kind of, we're in Guadalajara. We're also in the Bay Area. So that's a great place to be as far as, a state that has a big populace and is a great tequila or cocktail drinking state. And we should get our own feet wet. And it's, in many ways, it's a lot more rewarding to do it yourself because you're kind of owning it, and you're driving the car, if you will. But in another way, it's a lot more responsibility and a lot more, you don't close the laptop at 6 and go, okay, I can go do the next thing. It's really one of those situations where you're all in, and it takes up a good chunk of your time in your life, and you have to be prepared for that. So you just have to psychologically get ready for, hey, there's going to be a lot of ups and a lot of downs. These kinds of businesses, to a great degree, can be very manic, in the sense that, man, you get the highest highs when stuff works and it's clicking. You're like, wow, this is incredible. And then you can get some real lows when product doesn't show up and people are upset, and where is this and where is that. So if you're not kind of able to keep on that even keel of, hey, I realize that this is going to be very much up and down, it's hard to wake up every day and say, hey, I'm really excited to do this.
And so before you started your own tequila brand, when you were consulting, were you working for another company, or was that your own company, your consulting company?
I had my own consulting company for a number of years, and it was easy. The disconnect at the time, at least in the late 90s, between what was happening actually down in Mexico with what they were doing down there as far as growing and production versus importation and distribution in the 3-tier system up here, was very much separated. And so there was a lot of great dialogue to be had as far as kind of putting the puzzle pieces together and putting people together, and also kind of showing the path to, hey, just so you know, this is actually what it takes. It's not just about doing, this part. It's about doing these 3 parts in succession. And it feels great to be able to show people things and to actually have a working understanding of something. But ultimately, like most things in life, I suppose, if you feel like you have a grasp for something or you're doing it relatively well, you want to do it for yourself.
Okay. And you were doing the consulting for yourself, so you sort of had the idea already that you can't shut the laptop off at 6 o'clock. But then when you started your tequila brand, did you stop consulting, or were you sort of doing both?
No, I stopped because it was all consuming. It's, it's one of those things where you really can't shut the laptop off at 6, and you need to be available at all times. And you realize that a series of kind of fire drills come up that you weren't experiencing when it wasn't actually you, but you were just kind of advising. It becomes a huge facet of your life, and the circumstances around it are very unique in the sense that as things unfold, you realize that there's a whole myriad of different things that you never even thought about unless you were in the middle of it. Like, the buy and sell side, the logistics side, the account side with marketing, and how you want to stay relevant and how you want to make sure to win business and keep winning business and new placements while making sure that your depletions in the old ones, maintain. And so there's a lot of things on that control panel that you don't necessarily have to deal with day in and day out when you're strictly advising.
Okay. So, and I love how involved you've been in the industry, in the spirits and food and beverage industry. And being that involved is one way that you learned a lot of the, tricks of the trade, or whatever, what you need to do to make something work before you started your tequila brand. But it was at an industry event. I believe you were giving a seminar, and one of the people in the audience said something like, customers don't want to wait for someone to spend 10 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, to make a customized cocktail.
Right.
And that was your aha moment for Fresh Victor. Is that correct?
I think that, when you hear something over and over again, when it's validated in different, from different touch points, if you will, it sticks in your mind. And for me, at least, one of the things that I was experiencing is we kind of rode that wave of, hey, 100% agave tequila is this brilliant product as far as it can be used in a variety of ways. And one of our favorite ways is as a mixer. Blanco tequila really, with the sweetness of the agave and everything else, lends itself to all sorts of cocktail choices. Just you've seen tequila and tonic, and tequila and soda, and margaritas, and all sorts of citrus-based cocktails, and all the things that can be done with it. And as I was kind of going from national account to national account, or through the various distributors, one of the things I would do is build a cocktail and show them, hey, this is how versatile this is. Look at this. And they go, oh, wow, it's an amazing cocktail, but it, took you 5 or 6 minutes to build that. And who's going to sit around and wait for that? That's an aha moment, because it feels like a backhanded compliment. Love the cocktail, but didn't like the way you made it at all.
For the time it took you to make it, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of, like, hey, I don't know another way to do this. And one of the things that one of the distributors had said to me is, man, if you could find a cheat code, like if you could do exactly what you did, but do it in 20 seconds. And that created a conversation in and of itself. That was like me saying, hey, I've never really been at one of my own dinner parties, because I'm always behind the bar all night, making drinks for people. But the good news is everybody keeps coming to the bar. So I'm talking to everybody. I'm just not sitting and eating. Wouldn't it be cool if you could sit and eat because you were batching cocktails, or you had kind of this first 4 or 5 steps taken care of for you prior to having to build the individual drinks? So I thought about that for a while, and it was a great idea. And I thought it would be easy. It seems like it is on the surface, yeah, especially if you're just dealing with 3 or 4 ingredients. But the reality was I could do it really well or really effectively in my kitchen at home. Like I was like, oh, I've got this. And then when I wanted to take it to commercial production, like actually do a run, it took me a good 18 months to figure out, like every time we did it, I was like, that's not it. It doesn't match up. And I realized very quickly, this is difficult to do. And I get it, because if it was easy, it wouldn't have been done before, or would there be a lot of competition? So we dug in, and, that's been one of the most rewarding things in my career is tequila, really gave us a life for many years that was extremely rewarding. But this product, Fresh Victor, is especially rewarding in the sense that it's a broad market proposition. You can use it in different ways. You can use it with alcohol, with spirits, with wine for sangria, with sparkling for mimosas. You can use it with non-alc to make low-cal soft drinks or agua frescas. And so suddenly the world really opens up. It's not just, are you buying tequila today? It's, hey, you can use this a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, let's talk about the difficulties, though, of getting this going, because I mean, it's in your name, right? Fresh. So you have fresh ingredients. Mm-hmm. It's probably very difficult to keep that thing fresh for a long period of time.
So now we're getting on to hardships. And yes, the barriers to entry into this type of industry are really very huge, because first of all, if you haven't done it before, you have a hypothesis, but you don't have any data to back it up. And so you're dealing with fresh ingredients, you're blending stuff together, and then you're saying, okay, this needs to be refrigerated, so it's cold chain. We're not used to that in tequila. We're at ambient temperature. So, for us, I'm used to dealing with, 3-tier distributors and, mostly wine and spirits distributors across the country. This wasn't that same type of play. And so the learnings from that were really hard. I mean, they were honestly, if you want to talk about being kept up at night, months and months and months, if not years, like it was really, really difficult. And when we started, we didn't know what the shelf life could truly be. We knew coming from tequila and fermentation and distillation that what we were working against was these ingredients in a bottle. We don't want them to ferment. We want them to remain intact. And so one piece of good news in this hypothesis was, hey, we know that if it's kept cold, the fresh pressed citrus is acidic enough where it should be relatively stable. This isn't going to be a huge issue, we think. but not we know, we think. And so when I first, Kyle, launched this thing, we were marking the bottles at 42 days from date of production. Well, you barely make it to the distributor in the first 2 weeks. Like, that didn't work very well. And heartbreakingly, I was pouring out probably as much as we were selling. So from the onset in the beginning, I was like, hey, I don't know. This model's kind of upside down. Like, I don't know how much. As we continue to do shelf life studies and really examine how this held up under refrigeration at 38 to 42 degrees, we realized that, hey, it doesn't really go bad. It fades. Of course, like anything fresh, the citrus just fades on you. It doesn't have as much zing or pop or these sorts of things. But it was good for, twice that shelf life. We were much more at 3 to 4 months of shelf life as long as you kept it cold. So that was a huge turning point. But these learnings, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, capitalization, the ability to stay in market, to maintain good relationships with distributors, have the manufacturing in a place where you know that you can depend on it and scale it. There's a lot of variables.
Wow. So how many times did you want to quit?
Ooh, I mean, out loud, none. Out loud, none. I will say, you have days that fade together and you look at them and you realize over the years, like, wow, like when I launched this thing, my younger daughter was 1 and she's 9 now. And so you think to yourself, hey, I had some really hard days or some really bad days where I was like, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get past this. And I think with age and wisdom and maturity and everything else, you look at all the mistakes you've made in the past or how you could have done things better or differently or whatever. And you come to realize that if you have the right product and the right people around you, you'll navigate. You'll figure it out. Sometimes it can feel like you're being torn apart, but you figure it out because there are ways to continue to build something. That cold chain thing, refrigerated distribution versus ambient. I don't think I even realized way back when I talked about doing a fresh mixer or a cold chain mixer. A lot of my colleagues or distributors or even customers would say, is there any way you can make it shelf stable? And I said, yeah, but it won't be good. I mean, that's a totally different proposition. I can do a shelf stable, but we've all grown up with shelf stable. Like the thing I didn't want was the neon green, cloudy, high fructose, citric acid, all the things that I was trying to do: clean label, non-GMO, kosher, preservative free, low calorie, all the things that I really was chasing after to realize the dream. It's really hard to realize the dream, and it takes a lot longer than you think too, Kyle. That's the other thing I would tell your listeners is it's that 10-year overnight success story, right? So you have something special. Your family kind of reacted to it the way I had hoped. That most people that I put it in front of go, oh wow, this is amazing. But that doesn't translate to success because you have to scale that over and over and over and over and get up every day and do the same thing and tell the same story and do there's so much that goes into this. And so it's almost like a stage play, if you will, because if I'm out with a customer, I'm saying the same thing I said yesterday and last month and last year verbatim.
Yeah.
And they're loving it, but it's the first time I've been there. And so for them, it's the first time they saw this play and they want it to be just as good as opening day. So there's a lot of responsibility that goes into it. There's so much joy that comes from it. Like, my kids wear Fresh Victor sweatshirts. Like they just love the brand. They love the Llama. They love the community and the things that we started out the podcast with. The fact that it can be used for celebrating, it can be used for sharing, for breaking bread, for having dinners, for all these, going to the beach, by the pool, all these wonderful things. And that's what makes me proud and really keeps me going day after day.
That's awesome. And that mindset of perseverance is what got you through those hard times, really, just having that mindset.
Having that mindset and having to remind yourself over and over. I lose it sometimes. I lose perspective, and that perseverance that I'm so good at giving advice to others about, like, hey, I've been there, I've done that, listen, you'll get there. So every once in a while I can have an hour or two straight where I'm like, what is happening? Like, what do I have to do to hit a reset button? But just know, and as I, have said to my kids, what you're feeling in this moment, you're not going to be feeling a week from now, a month from now. It's going to be a very different circumstance. Even tomorrow morning, it'll be different. So you just have to remind yourself about the macro or the bigger picture, because that's what is important about the build. It's not what happened today. It's what happens along a string of days, weeks, months, years. If you can keep the same messaging and you believe in it just as much as you always did, there's something to it.
I love that advice. Let's talk about the brand for a second. So Fresh, obviously, these are fresh mixers, but where does Victor come from? And where does talk about the Llama a little bit.
The first word we wanted people to read on the label was fresh. We wanted people to have a working understanding that this should be different than what you're used to. I personally feel, coming from the industry, that mixers always had a really bad name attached to them. And this is through growing up. Like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you put a lot of pride in your spirit choices or your wine choices. But mixers were an afterthought. It was like, well, just, pick up that one that, looks terrible and tastes terrible, but at least it mixes. There wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to, grow the field or feel like they were really, really different from what you're using, unless you were doing it from scratch. And so for me, I wanted people to feel like there was a stark contrast in what we were doing right away. Like, hey, this is in the refrigerator. Why? It says fresh. Victor is really in reference to, you're the victor. It's a victory for you. You're getting a fresh victory. Like, you're winning now. We want to make sure that we got you there. And this was something for us that was very much akin to that celebrating facet of finally, something that you can be proud to serve, that whether it's on premise at a restaurant, bar, casino, cruise ship, hotel, resort, wherever you're going to drink it outside, nightclub, you can be proud to say, hey, this is a Fresh Victor cocktail. This is fresh. And we're mixing it the right way. At home, the exact same thing, the kind of community that we want to build around this, it's almost like a party. We want to be able to say, hey, you can be at home and have dinner parties, or, Christmas or Hanukkah or, Halloween or whatever you're doing, and serve this, the Mexican lime or the cactus pear or the 3 citrus and mint or whatever, and have your guests go, hey, that was really good. What did you do? How did you do that? And you just say, hey, here's the secret. It's just this. We grabbed a bottle of this. That's special to us. And then the Llama is very much kind of adjacent to that party aspect. When I say party, what I kind of mean is that the celebratory feeling of being with family and friends, knowing that you're kind of in a warm space and that you guys are enjoying the conversations. A Llama is a very social pack animal. And when my wife and I were in Peru, we were absolutely amazed in Lima and Cusco and other cities where we would have these amazing lunches or dinners, like comidas, that were 12, 13 courses over 3.5, 4 hours. And, you don't hear they're trying to turn over the table before you sit down. Like, they're like, how long are you going to be there? They're like, hey, you're ours for the day. So buckle up. And what we noticed was the culinary aspects of the society very much mirrored the mixology aspects. They were both just so well executed against. And llamas were literally walking up to the restaurants with packs on them with fresh fruit that were being taken off, washed, and crushed. And we went, that's something. That's not, hey, I'm opening a can of, whatever. It's like, hey, this, it doesn't get fresher than this. And, in a very puerile or elementary way, for me growing up in the Bay Area, I also wanted something that could be really iconic. When you think about mascots, when you think about symbols, when you think about things, what we all strive for is something that's instantly recognizable. Like you walk down a supermarket or a liquor store shelf or whatever, and you go, "Oh, I know what that is." Much like Tony Tiger. You know what that is. Whether you eat it or you don't need it, you know what it is, and that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what we wanted. Lastly, what I'll say about the llama that I really love, it's a conversation piece. So I love the fact that people walk up to me all the time going, "What's the deal with the camel? What's the deal with the alpaca? What's going on with that llama?" Because one of the elementary things in consumer products is you want that dialogue to occur. You want the curiosity. You want to be able to tell a story. You want to be able to get that engagement of, "Hey, I'm interested in this," whether they buy it or not. You want them to know about it. So those are kind of the things that go into the branding, as far as saying we want this to be a recognizable kind of first to category prospect where people can be really proud to pick it up in the market or the liquor store and say, "Hey, I didn't cut any corners. I made an exceptional cocktail, but I did it in a much easier way."
That's great. I love the brand. The brand is as maybe the kids maybe back in the day said, it's fresh. It's a
Yeah.
fresh brand for sure. And so did you come up with the different flavors yourself? Were some of these yours, or do you have a team working on these, or how did the flavors come together?
They come from the actual tequila industry, owning tequila brands, knowing what cocktails were sought after, especially on premise for the most part. So if you have restaurants and bars, if you see them doing a 3 citrus margarita, or you see them utilizing prickly pear or a spicy margarita or rumrita or whatever, you think to yourself, okay, what ingredients go into the broader cocktail offerings, first and foremost? And then, secondly, and this is very important, I wanted to create things that were a little bit more difficult or a little bit more of an annoyance to bartenders and mixologists to say, "Hey, I'm not really excited to crush jalapenos or to work with prickly pear or to figure out the ginger ratio with the pineapple." These aspects, mint, all things that good mixologists and bartenders are very adept at. But it's a lot easier to sell something in when you can sell it in with absolute freshness, consistency, and the ability to say, "Wouldn't you like to take this step away from yourself?" And the same thing was occurring at home. If you're trying to make spicy things at home, or you're trying to balance, I consider mixology a lot like baking. I think the ratios are very important. And so when you're just eyeing it, or you're just, kind of winging it, if you will, you can make good stuff. But the reality is, when somebody can already take the measurements and the ratios and the consistency and the freshness and all the things that you want for your drinks and have them available to you in a bottle, that's a great business proposition. And so I really predicated the flavors off of what I had seen the last 10, 15 years in the industry on premise, and knowing that I wanted to use some ingredients that maybe are a little bit more difficult to use on the fly and make life easier for people. Spicy is great because people gravitate towards that. I mean, they either really do or they really don't. But to be able to have offerings like this where we're like, "Hey, these are a little bit more unique," and they marry with everything, vodka, rum, gin, tequila, whiskey, mezcal, wine for sangria, beer for shandies. You can really take whatever you have at home or whatever you're buying in the store that day and mix it with Fresh Victor. And so that's kind of the flavor profiles. I have a lot more ideas, but the reality is, when you have 9 flavors and 2 bottle sizes, that's 18 SKUs. That's 18 form factors. So distributors aren't hoping that Ken comes up with new ideas or iterates on it. They're hoping that I say, "Okay, let's pull 2 back and let's introduce 2 new ones," and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so this was so well thought through, but that was from your 10 to 20 years of consulting and being in spirits, right? I mean, that's how you were able to think very carefully and strategically through these choices.
We just, for me, Kyle, we had done a stint for 5 or 6 years in Austin, in Texas, and with our tequila brand there, these were things, especially kind of in the Southwest, I was noticing, Three Citrus was really hot, prickly pear was really hot, spicy jalapeno or habanero was really hot. These were all things that were working, and people were drinking 2 or 3 drinks at a time. And so those were the kind of easier things for me. The other ones are probably no brainers to a certain degree, like grapefruit and sea salt. You just think Paloma or Salty Dog, instantly you go towards that makes sense. Mexican lime and agave, margaritas, daiquiris, that makes sense. Lemon sour, absolutely. Spiked lemonades, whiskey sours, these sorts of things. Cucumber has been kind of big since like 2018, 19. It's not always easy, especially if you're using fresh ingredients, to nail these types of ratios. They can differ, especially when you're dealing with fresh produce. And so the thing that I really like about our system is, as we're doing everything at the production facility, we can really balance not only the formulations week over week, but the pH and everything else to make sure it's exactly like the week before. And that's super helpful, because if you're crushing, if you're squeezing limes and adding sweeteners and, using fresh vegetables and the such, it can really range from week to week, month to month, depending on the crops.
Okay. It's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
Your business. So it's amazing. I love the stories you've shared. I love you're talking about perseverance. I've just got a few more questions and we can wrap up. This has been so much fun. I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours about this and all your experience and advice for entrepreneurs. I wanted to ask you, what is the most significant misconception people have about spirit-free or non-alcoholic drinks?
I would say that what comes to mind right away for me is the real gap between generations, meaning that younger people are tending not to drink as much alcohol. They're going for no alcohol whatsoever, or low alcohol, or, even more, probably more spirits, like high-end spirits, than they are, just beer and wine as a mid-offering. So that all being said, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is crafting drinks should have a huge difference in pricing due to whether there's alcohol in there or not alcohol. And I would contend that this is much more an art form, that if you're building a mocktail, it can be just as complex as a cocktail. We've put a real misnomer on, hey, alcohol makes this much more valuable. I got to pay a lot more for this drink because I'm getting booze in it. And the reality is, you're buying an experience. So if we're still crushing and muddling and, adding, various ingredients to this drink, it's not, kind of your father's soft drink or even a Shirley Temple or something like that, where you're just pouring grenadine into a 7-Up. It's got 6 ingredients in it, and it's handcrafted. And so I'm very much in favor, from the beverage perspective on the whole, that people should drink exactly what they want and like to drink. And it shouldn't make any difference if it's alcohol or not alcohol. This is an equal playing field. And so it just becomes making a standard of, okay, if the alcohol does cost more, which is probably nominal, charge 16 to 18, but a mocktail should still probably be somewhere between 12 and 16. It should still be up there, because the art and the efforts put into it.
And we talked about on our intro call that there are bars now that are completely alcohol free.
Mm-hmm.
In San Francisco, where else? Where else can you find these? Do you find these in other cities?
Oh, absolutely. You can find them in Austin and Miami and Boston and New York. I mean, these things are popping up all over the place, and it's not something that I think that any of us would have seen 10 or 15 years ago. It's not an expectation, but it's, the world's really changed. And for me, I talk about this all the time. When walking into my grandparents' house at any given time, the garage fridge was filled with Coca-Cola and Hawaiian Punch. That it was just an expectation. Well, my kids are drinking half gallons of water. They can't even relate to, like, hey, what are you doing? Midday, you're doing what? So from that aspect, you really look at it from, where our trends leading and going, and health, this is one of the great things about Fresh Victor is being clean label. You want to be able to have your offerings really reflect what people want in 2025. And I think there's absolutely and will always be absolutely room for both. I think that these trends are cyclical. People will come back to cocktails. I'm never, worried like, oh no, this is going away. Not at all. I think that trends, especially in 5 to 10 year increments, can you'll see waves of things. And right now, that's exactly what we're experiencing it. So I think you'll see it more and more. And Kyle, 25%, 30% of my ask when we're building menus for restaurants and bars and clubs and casinos and such, they're asking for mocktails. They're asking for recipes for our alternatives that they can offer their patrons to say, hey, if you don't want to be drinking, that's absolutely fine. We've got this too.
That's awesome. And I love your website. So freshvictor.com, you can actually buy the product there. There's also tons of examples of different kind of mocktails or cocktails that you can make with the different mixers.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is exactly what this is intended to do. I love the fact that when you're dealing with fresh and you're dealing with the kinds of things that we offer, you're absolutely able to mix it with whatever you like, in the sense that it is designed to go with any spirit. But man, some of my, most surprising times have been people that have come to me and they said, hey, I just tried this out as a mocktail. Check this out. And I'll go, hey, you steep the green tea how long? And what are you doing here? And it's really cool to see how culinary this is. And of course we knew, like my wife does this a lot. We use the jalapeno lime for ceviche, the Mexican lime and agave for marinating carne asada, the pineapple and ginger for shrimp and fish on the grill. There's a lot of really cool aspects to being able to use a fresh product. And I'm just super excited to see over the next 5 years how people use it.
Yeah, this is super exciting. I'm excited to see that as well. So Ken, I wanted to ask you, do you consider yourself more of a maker or a manager?
Wow. I don't, no one's ever asked me that before. First of all, that's the pause. I like to be thoughtful about my responses. You take a lot of pride in the creation, like the creation, the formulations in the creation, you take a lot of pride in, because it really is that trial and error. And it's like going to a long, very, very difficult class that you finally complete. And you have a sense of accomplishment. Like, hey, it worked. Or, hey, we finally got to the point where we have it in a bottle and you can see it on the shelf. Like that creator or maker thing never goes away. Like you always take a tremendous amount of pride in that, because it's kind of your baby. It's your child. It's your, something that you nurture from inception, or even from, the thought process of how are we going to do this all the way to execution of getting it out there. The manager part is probably in a lot of ways, I talked about how hard it was to make the products. The management part is really a completely different skill set, where it's like, man, navigating those waters is what's going to cause the more stress, because when you're creating, there's a real level of optimism, and anything's possible. And so you feel like, hey, this is going to be so amazing. And then when you're managing, that's where all the hard balls are thrown at you, and you got to see what you're made of, and you got to say, because it's not about the product, it's not about a lot of those variables we talked about. It's about how you persevere and maintain through that. And so I'd say both are really relevant and necessary skill sets to have. You really do need to have both if you're going to create something. But the management side is where I'd put some more critical thinking behind how you're going to execute against your plan, and how you're going to scale your product in a very saturated market space, where there may be a lot of in-kind competition, or there may be a lot of obstacles thrown up your way because of the way that you've decided that you're going to insist on doing things.
So you're a mixture of both.
I'm a mixture of both by necessity. I'm not sure. I wonder in retrospect if I could have picked one or the other effectively. It's just seeing everything all the way through, right? And so you're constantly in that creative, hey, maker mode of telling your story and why you do what you do. So that always sticks very close to you. But man, that managerial side of execution is everything as you're building your business.
For sure. Very critical. So I just have a lightning round of questions just to get to know you a little bit better. Your favorite candy bar?
Reese's peanut butter cups.
Favorite music artist?
Oh God, I would have to go back to Led Zeppelin.
Favorite cereal?
You're asking a lot of hard questions. I mentioned Tony Tiger, so I'd be remiss to go against him at this point. But yeah, growing up, definitely that was a staple.
Frosted Flakes, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mac or PC?
Now Mac.
Google or Microsoft?
Google.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs. 3.
Phantom or Les Mis?
Les Mis.
All right. And the last question I have for you, what's the worst thing about being an entrepreneur and what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
The best thing, okay, let's start with the worst thing. The worst thing about being an entrepreneur will be what it takes you away from. You have a real obligation to the people that have helped you build this, and you need to be omnipresent. You need to be there, and the buck stops with you. And so, whether I'm doing tastings on Saturday afternoons at Total Wine and More, or I'm out presenting to some weird account at 9:30 at night on a Wednesday, you're always thinking this way, and it does take you away from you time. Hey, I'd like to read a book. I'd like to spend extra time with the family, or travel takes me away to open up new distributorships or new account opportunities or whatever else. What I'm saying about the bad parts of being an entrepreneur are also the greatest parts about being an entrepreneur, because you're actually accomplishing something out in the world. And when your family recognizes that, when your daughters or your wife say, I'm so extremely proud of you, or this product is so amazing, I'm going to share it with friends or whatever else, you feel like I've really done something. This is really special, or this is unique to us. And that feeling, there's nothing like it. It's that manic thing, right? Like, you can be missing something and loving something at the same time. It's totally worth it, is what I'm trying to say. But you have to have the right family, the right support system, the right advisors and board members and people around you in order to get it right. And that does not come easily. That's not something you can just say, hey, I can create this in a weekend. It's trial and error, it's failures, it's being able to persevere. And at the end of the day, it's finding balance, where you can say it's not absolutely one way or the other. You have to find that balance that works for everybody. And once you find that balance, life's really good.
I love those answers. Thank you so much for being generous with your time today, Ken. You mentioned reading a book. Is there a book that you recommend the most to people?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I feel like I haven't been able to read a book in like a decade because I'm always out trying to do stuff. Even more than reading a book, because I'm on planes or I'm in cars or doing everything else, I would probably answer you, Kyle, by saying there's a tremendous amount of podcasts like yourself that you can garner a lot from, hearing these founders' experiences, hearing about what it takes to actually build a company, what it takes to maintain the good, the bad, the ugly. It's such a shift, right? It's such a cultural shift, because growing up, that's exactly what my parents recommended I do, is, hey, read this or read that, or figure this out. And now it's, hey, in 45 minutes I can just put headphones in and I can basically get a summary version of a really good business book read to me. And then I get off the plane and I go, that, I'm going to take 3 things from that and try to use them.
I love it. Do you have a recommended podcast that people could check out?
Well, definitely yours.
Well, thank you. Any others that you listen to on the regular?
Yeah, Tim Ferriss. I mean, there's a lot of them that come up in my feeds all the time, and I also Dan Dunn. In the beverage industry, that's a fantastic one. Like, a lot of it is unpacking what you want to know about the most as far as what can be applied to you, and whether it's hospitality or beverage. I really recommend that if you're at Spotify or Apple or whatever else, that you just kind of put in the keywords that you're most interested in and filter it from there, because there's a lot of them that I probably don't even remember off the top of my head what they're called, but I'll get specific episodes because the keywords hit. And I'll go, oh, wow, I never would have found that unless I had done it this way. But you can take a lot away from it because you're actually hearing these founders either tell you the same things over and over again because they're common threads, or give you really unique perspectives on, man, I'll never do that again. Or, this is the absolute way that I hit that home run. And so I'm constantly looking for new stuff too. But yeah, Dan Dunn, especially in the beverage space, is a really interesting character as far as being able to describe hospitality, beverages, and a number of celebrities going on there to retell stories and common experiences.
I love your advice about listening to podcasts. I think it's a great way to learn. Next week, I will have interviewed 50 entrepreneurs to make their manager money.
Congrats.
And I've learned and been inspired from every one of you, and especially yours, Ken, today. So thanks for being so generous with your time. And I appreciate everything that you've shared with the audience. Go to freshvictor.com and order some of these mixers. You can also get them at Whole Foods. I know they're in Whole Food now, and you're expanding. You're mostly in the West right now, but there are other places that you can purchase Fresh Victor. So thank you again, Ken.
Thank you, Kyle. I had a great time. Thanks for having me on.